The defection that could unravel Beijing. A Chinese diplomat disappears, and Xi Jinping's carefully constructed power structure may never be the same. A senior Chinese diplomat has vanished. Not missing in the way people sometimes go quiet for a few days. Vanished in the way that sends shockwaves through intelligence agencies across 3 continents. The kind of disappearance that makes Beijing's Ministry of State Security work around the clock and causes quiet panic in the highest levels of the Chinese Communist Party. According to multiple Western intelligence sources, a high-ranking Chinese foreign ministry official with direct access to classified strategic planning documents has defected to the United States. And what this individual knows about Xi Jinping's intentions toward Taiwan, about China's military readiness, about internal party divisions, could fundamentally alter how the world understands the most dangerous flashpoint on the planet right now. Welcome to Legal Lens USA. This is an analysis of what may be one of the most significant intelligence events in decades. And if you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now, because we are going to break down exactly why this defection matters, what it reveals about fractures inside the Chinese Communist Party, and how it could change everything about the coming confrontation over Taiwan. The story begins not with a dramatic airport chase or a midnight border crossing, but with something far more subtle and far more alarming. Sometime in the past several weeks, a Chinese diplomat stationed at a key overseas posting simply stopped showing up for scheduled meetings. Colleagues noticed the absence. Calls went unanswered. The individual's residence was found empty, personal belongings gone, no forwarding information left behind. Within 48 hours, Beijing was reportedly conducting urgent internal investigations, trying to piece together how someone with access to sensitive strategic communications could simply disappear without triggering security protocols. The diplomat in question was not a low-level attaché processing visa applications or attending ribbon-cutting ceremonies. According to sources familiar with the matter, this individual held a senior position within China's foreign ministry apparatus, someone who sat in meetings where Taiwan contingency plans were discussed, where assessments of American military posture in the Indo-Pacific were analyzed, where the internal debates about timing and readiness for potential military action were happening in real time. The defection follows a pattern that should deeply concern anyone watching the escalating tensions between Beijing and Washington. Over the past 18 months, there have been at least 3 other reported instances of Chinese officials with access to sensitive information either defecting or attempting to establish contact with Western intelligence services. Each case involves individuals who possess knowledge not just of military capabilities or weapons systems, but of something potentially more valuable: the internal political dynamics, the power struggles, the genuine assessments that Chinese leadership makes when the propaganda cameras are turned off and the real conversations happen behind closed doors. What makes this particular defection so significant is the timing. It comes as Xi Jinping has consolidated power to a degree not seen since Mao Zedong, as China's military has accelerated its buildup of forces directly across from Taiwan, as American intelligence agencies have warned that the window for potential Chinese military action against Taiwan may be narrowing to sometime between now and 2027. A defector who can speak to what Beijing actually believes about its readiness, about American resolve, about the internal fractures within the Communist Party over the risks of military confrontation. That individual possesses intelligence that could reshape strategic planning across the entire Pacific theater. Consider what this defection reveals about vulnerabilities in China's security apparatus. The Chinese Ministry of State Security operates one of the most sophisticated counterintelligence systems on Earth, employing surveillance technology, political monitoring, and ideological control mechanisms designed to prevent exactly this kind of breach. Every Chinese official with access to sensitive information undergoes extensive vetting, continuous political education, and operates under the assumption that colleagues, neighbors, even family members might report suspicious behavior or ideological wavering. The fact that someone could navigate this system, maintain trusted access to classified strategic planning, and successfully defect to the United States without being stopped suggests either a catastrophic failure in Chinese security procedures or, more intriguingly, the possibility that there are networks of individuals within China's governmental structure who have quietly concluded that the current trajectory under Xi Jinping leads somewhere they cannot support. The technical challenge of executing such a defection cannot be overstated. Unlike the Cold War era, when Eastern Bloc officials might approach Western embassies or arrange meetings with intelligence officers during overseas travel, modern Chinese officials operate under far more restrictive surveillance. Their communications are monitored, their travel is tracked, their associations are documented. Digital surveillance extends beyond work devices into personal phones, social media activity, even reading habits and entertainment consumption patterns. Successful defection requires not just a moment of opportunity, but careful planning executed over potentially months or years, establishing covert communication channels, building trust with foreign intelligence services, arranging logistics for physical movement that avoids detection until the individual is safely beyond Beijing's reach. According to people familiar with such operations, the planning for a high-value defection like this would typically involve multiple intelligence agencies coordinating safe houses, transportation, new identity documents, and comprehensive debriefing protocols that can last months as analysts work to extract every piece of actionable intelligence the defector possesses. The intelligence value of someone positioned as this defector reportedly was extends across multiple critical domains. First and most obviously, there is military intelligence, detailed knowledge of China's actual military readiness versus the capabilities it projects publicly, assessments of weaknesses in Taiwan's defenses that Chinese planners believe they could exploit, timelines for when various weapon systems and force deployments will reach operational readiness, and critically, the internal debates within the People's Liberation Army about whether current forces could successfully execute an amphibious invasion of Taiwan, or whether that remains beyond realistic capability in the near term. Second, there is political intelligence about the internal dynamics of Chinese Communist Party leadership. Who among the Politburo Standing Committee genuinely supports aggressive action toward Taiwan versus who harbors doubts but remains silent out of political survival instinct? What are the real economic assessments being presented to leadership about China's ability to withstand the kind of comprehensive economic sanctions that would follow military action against Taiwan? How seriously does Xi Jinping take American security commitments to Taiwan, and does he believe that the United States would actually intervene militarily if China moved against the island? Third, there is counterintelligence value in understanding what China knows about American capabilities, plans, and intelligence sources. A defector who participated in strategic planning meetings would have visibility into what intelligence Chinese agencies have successfully collected about American military dispositions, force readiness, political will, and potential weaknesses that Beijing believes it could exploit. This creates a counterintelligence map that allows American agencies to identify which sources have been compromised, which collection methods China has identified and may be feeding with disinformation, and where genuine intelligence gaps exist in Chinese understanding that could be strategically preserved or exploited. The strategic implications of this defection extend far beyond the immediate intelligence windfall. If Beijing cannot trust its own senior officials to maintain loyalty under the current political system, it suggests fundamental weaknesses in the ideological cohesion that the Communist Party relies upon to maintain control. Xi Jinping has spent the past decade conducting anti-corruption campaigns that served as much to consolidate political power and eliminate rivals as to address genuine corruption, instilling a climate of fear and suspicion throughout the party apparatus. The defection suggests that this climate, rather than ensuring loyalty, may be creating conditions where officials conclude that the risks of staying outweigh the risks of leaving. For decades, Chinese officials who grew disillusioned with the party or feared political persecution had essentially nowhere to go. Defecting meant abandoning family members who would face severe consequences, giving up professional identity and social position, entering an uncertain future in a foreign country, where even with new identity and protection, the threat of Chinese intelligence services attempting retaliation remained real. The calculation has apparently shifted for some, whether due to ideological disillusionment with Xi's increasingly authoritarian direction, fear of internal purges that could target them regardless of loyalty, assessment that China's current trajectory leads toward conflict they believe would be catastrophic, or simply opportunities presented by overseas postings that reduced immediate danger to family members. The barriers that once made defection nearly unthinkable have lowered. The response from Beijing will be swift and severe. Chinese state security will conduct exhaustive investigations to determine how the defection occurred, who else might have been involved, whether the defector had accomplices who remain in place, and what damage has been done to Chinese strategic interests. Officials who worked closely with the defector will face intensive questioning and likely political consequences, even if they had no involvement, because the failure to detect warning signs or report suspicious behavior represents its own punishable offense in the system. The defection also forces Chinese intelligence to assume that any information the individual had access to is now in American hands, requiring assessment of what strategic plans, military timelines, or intelligence operations may need to be modified or abandoned because they are no longer secret. This creates cascading operational impacts as Beijing works to determine the full scope of compromised information while attempting to limit damage to ongoing intelligence collection and strategic planning. For the United States and its allies, the defection represents both opportunity and challenge. The intelligence gained can inform everything from force posture decisions to diplomatic strategy, to assessments of when and under what conditions China might move against Taiwan. But it also creates pressure to act on that intelligence in ways that could accelerate rather than prevent conflict. If the defector reveals that China's military assesses it will be ready for Taiwan contingencies by a specific date, does that create pressure for the United States to take preemptive actions that might themselves trigger the conflict they are trying to deter? If the intelligence shows internal Communist Party divisions over Taiwan policy, does that create an opportunity for diplomatic approaches that might exploit those divisions? Or does attempting to do so simply rally the party around Xi and eliminate whatever internal resistance exists? The defection is already generating debate within Western intelligence and policy communities about what it signals. Some analysts interpret it as evidence that China's system is more fragile than it appears, that the facade of unity and strength masks deep internal anxieties about the sustainability of Xi's approach and the risks of his increasingly aggressive foreign policy. Others warn against overconfidence, noting that defections happened throughout the Cold War without preventing the Soviet Union from remaining a formidable adversary for decades, and that one official's doubts do not necessarily reflect broader systemic weakness. Of course, Beijing has moved quickly to control the narrative. Chinese state media has not acknowledged any defection, maintaining complete silence on the matter in a strategy designed to prevent the story from gaining traction domestically, while depriving Western media of official confirmation that might amplify coverage. Simultaneously, Chinese intelligence services are likely working to determine whether they can identify the defectors' current location and either retrieve them through extradition requests built on fabricated criminal charges or through more direct, covert action. The Chinese government has demonstrated willingness to pursue individuals who flee abroad, conducting operations ranging from diplomatic pressure on host governments to inducement campaigns targeting family members to, in some cases, attempts at forced repatriation or elimination. According to sources familiar with such cases, defectors in Western protective custody live under security protocols that assume persistent Chinese intelligence interest and potential action. The individual in this case will likely spend years, if not the remainder of their life, under some form of protective arrangement, with new identity, restricted ability to contact former associates or family members who remain in China, and the knowledge that Beijing will never stop looking for opportunities to either retrieve or neutralize them. The implications for Taiwan are direct and urgent. If the defector can provide clarity about whether China genuinely intends to move militarily against Taiwan in the near term, what specific operational plans exist, what conditions Beijing believes would need to be met before attempting invasion, and how Chinese planners assess the risks and likelihood of American military intervention. That intelligence could fundamentally reshape Taiwan's defense preparations and American security commitments. The ambiguity that has characterized cross-strait relations for decades, with Beijing asserting eventual reunification without specifying timelines, and Washington maintaining strategic ambiguity about whether it would defend Taiwan militarily. That ambiguity may be giving way to much clearer and more dangerous clarity about intentions and capabilities. Taiwan's government will be seeking access to whatever intelligence the defector provides that bears on its security, while simultaneously managing the political challenge of preparing its population for potential conflict without creating panic or undermining the economic relationships with China that remain critical to Taiwan's prosperity. The United States faces its own complex set of choices informed by this intelligence. Does this defection and the information it provides argue for strengthening security commitments to Taiwan to deter Chinese action? Or does it suggest that such strengthening would itself precipitate the conflict by convincing Beijing that the window for action is closing and delay only makes success less likely? For military planners across the Indo-Pacific, the defection represents a reminder that the competition with China is not solely about missile ranges, aircraft carriers, or cyber capabilities. It is also about the strength of political systems, the resilience of institutions, the ability to maintain loyalty and cohesion under pressure, and the fundamental question of whether authoritarian control can ultimately compete with systems that, however imperfect, allow for dissent, debate, and the possibility that individuals can choose different paths without their families facing persecution. The defection suggests that for all of China's impressive economic growth, military modernization, and technological advancement, the political system Xi Jinping has constructed contains internal tensions and vulnerabilities that no amount of surveillance or ideological training can entirely eliminate. The simple reality that some individuals with access to the highest levels of strategic planning would conclude that defecting to the United States represents a better option than remaining within the Chinese system tells us something significant about the limits of authoritarian control and the costs that Xi's consolidation of power has imposed on the very system he claims to be strengthening. The story will continue developing in the weeks and months ahead. Intelligence analysts will spend countless hours debriefing the defector, extracting every detail about Chinese capabilities, intentions, and internal dynamics. Policymakers will debate how to use that intelligence to inform strategy, without revealing sources and methods that would compromise future collection. Beijing will conduct damage assessment and likely launch public relations campaigns designed to minimize the significance of the defection, while privately working to prevent additional breaches. And across the world, other Chinese officials with access to sensitive information will be making their own calculations about loyalty, risk, and whether the system they serve is moving in directions they can continue to support. This is what one defection has done already. It has exposed vulnerabilities in China's security apparatus, provided the United States with potentially critical intelligence about Chinese strategic planning, and demonstrated that Xi Jinping's vision of a unified, disciplined, ideologically committed Communist Party capable of challenging American power contains fractures that no amount of propaganda can completely conceal. If you are watching this and you understand the magnitude of what this defection means for the future of the Indo-Pacific, for the security of Taiwan, for the broader competition between the United States and China, then share this analysis right now. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you have not already, because Legal Lens USA will continue tracking this story as it develops and breaking down what it means in ways that actually connect the pieces. The question we need to discuss in the comments is this: does this defection signal that China's system is more fragile than it appears, or is this an isolated incident that tells us nothing about the broader stability of Communist Party control? Let us know what you think, because this conversation matters, and your perspective matters. This is what happens when senior officials inside authoritarian systems conclude that the costs of staying exceed the risks of leaving. The answers about what that means for China's future, and for the stability of the entire Indo-Pacific region, are not clear yet. The consequences are not fully understood yet, but the question has been asked loudly by one individual's choice to walk away from the Chinese Communist Party and share what they know with the United States. And that question will reshape strategic calculations across Washington, Beijing, and every capital in between for years to come.